So this is a great moment to start our conversation between Neil Tyson and another very distinguished astronomer, Dr. Robert Kirshner, who is a Klaus Professor of Science at Harvard University, and he has been fabulous in agreeing to moderate tonight's discussion. Dr. Kirshner, thank you so much, and I invite you both to the stage. And after the discussion, Dr. Tyson and Kirshner will take a few questions.
Protect yourself at all times. Well, Neil, nobody told us what we were supposed to do exactly, did they?
Well, you've got a whole list there,
Yes,
so I don't
I
think this is an
do.
issue.
How's the universe today, Dr. Tyson?
Oh, the universe is good. It's
I
good.
understand for lunch you had the onion rings of Saturn.
I did have onion rings at the restaurant.
Yes.
Except
Well-
they were, I was disappointed because they were the really thin kind that don't come to you in a ring. It's kind of a tangled.
I'm just kind of introducing stuff here.
You started it.
Okay.
I'm just telling you, they were not Saturn's rings. They were like
They were not saturated rings?
with oil, yes, but they were.
No. Well, here's the idea. I figured, remember there was this election?
Yes.
And there was like Obama,
Yeah.
and then there was this guy who's kind of articulate. He thinks he's smart, he talks a lot, but he didn't win the prize. The other guy.
Yeah.
So I thought, we could maybe
Oh, I see.
be like a team that way.
I see.
Now, I understand that Brad Washburn took a picture of you when you were very young, and then people have gone back since to see how you've changed over time.
I didn't know this.
Yeah, that's a book you could read about the... Okay, well, and I understand that the museum is working on getting one of those overhead projectors that figured in the political campaign this year.
Indeed it did. There was either a profound technological ignorance in the losing candidate,
What do you mean either?
or
Or?
a misunderstanding. You remember in the debates?
Yeah, you could see Russia from there.
Well, no, not that debate. There was the comment
That was my debate.
there was the comment about Adler Planetarium in Chicago getting $3 million earmark for an overhead projector. Now, of course, if it was
You
an
meant
actual
directed-
overhead projector, that would be bad, right? Because those things, they're like, $50, whatever. So, but it's actually a planetarium projector, which also happens to project overhead. So there seemed to
My
be
friend.
there seemed to be some profound mix-up in the information flow into those debates.
Right. So I'm thinking about this context, and I noticed something last night. I stayed up late, and I heard the stem-winding speech about the woman who was 106 years old, and yes, she can. And so it made me think that maybe we could have a conversation on dangerous topics.
Sure.
Politics, race. So I'm thinking, here's Obama. He's a guy, he's an African American. And I was trying to think, who else did I know who was kind of like a really successful person that I actually had to think about whether he was or wasn't. It really wasn't the first thing that came to my mind. That was you. I know you
Okay.
were called some cruel names when you were a kid, like geek and maybe nerd.
Well, not to my face, because I was bigger than most other
Yeah.
kids. So
But I thought it
that
might
wasn't-
be interesting.
I knew they thought it, but
But I
I was
thought it
never,
might-
it was
well,
really spoken to
I
me.
thought it might be interesting or a little dangerous to tread on this topic a little bit and to say a little bit because in science, the scientific community, of which I know very well, does not really reflect the American population
Not at all.
that well. You must know something about this from your own life. You must know something about this from your professional activities where you kind of reach out. And you might even have some suggestions for what the scientific community might do. So would you dare?
Well, I don't claim any special insight. There's no part of my professional identity that includes any direct reference to my skin color.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah, I mean, it's...
That's why I had to think about it twice.
For example, if I may, it was 1989. I was a graduate student at Columbia University. A phone call came into the department. The department already knew that I had done some things to reach the public. I'd already published a book, for example, by then. And a phone call came in from Fox News, local Fox News. They got over the wires that there was an explosion on the sun. A blob of plasma was headed this way.
A blob of plasma?
And they wanted to know if Earth was safe. So they sent the call to me. So, and this is the weatherman, because the weather guy always does the science thing. So I said...
At the TV station.
The sun is approaching solar maximum, increased sunspots. There's extra turbulence. Occasionally it burps up some gas. Occasionally it heads our way. We're shielded by Earth's magnetic field. The particles will split, positive in one direction, negative in another. They'll spiral, collide with our atmospheric molecules, render them aglow, creating the beautiful aurora. So this weekend, go north, and you can enjoy the sight. But is the Earth okay? Earth will be fine. So then he said, there's a point to all this.
Yeah,
then he said, can you do that on the air? And I said, because that was just a phone call. So I said, sure. Okay, we'll send a limo to pick you up. And I'm in graduate school. I'm smelling funky. I got, I don't have clothes for this. So, okay, can you pick me up at home? I run home, shower quickly, put on my one jacket and my one tie. They take me to the stage, and we reproduce that conversation. Okay, I get home. They're going to air it later that afternoon through the evening news. I get home. I call everybody. This is my first time ever on television. Call mom, dad, sis, brother, grandma, grandpa. I'm going to be on TV. So watch what happens. I'm there eating dinner, and up comes the segment. And I see this interview, and I'm looking at it. I said, something's odd about this. And then I dropped my fork. I realized, this is 1989. I had never in my life witnessed a black person on television who's not either an entertainer or an athlete, a black person on television interviewed for expertise that had nothing to do with being black. I had never before seen it until that moment. And the person didn't ask me, well, how do black people feel about this radiation from the sun? Does it affect your skin differently from my skin? That's not how the interview went. I was asked, was Earth going to be safe? Okay. And then I said, did I just not notice it until now? I would go another 6 years before I would see someone other than myself being interviewed for expertise that had nothing to do with being black. Yeah. So I have to conclude, based on that statistic, that was the first time it had ever happened. Because no, think about it. The expertise, they'd get an expert. They'd get an expert, and there'd be some issue in the inner city, so they get the preacher to talk, or they get the congressman to talk about enterprise zones in the inner city. It would always be a black issue. And so I realized that what are some of the lingering stereotypes that still exist? Less today than in the past. But what are some of the, you go back early enough, one stereotype was black people are lazy or shiftless or they're physically inferior. Well, that kind of ended when Jesse Owens won 4 gold medals and 4 world records inside of 45 minutes in Berlin in front of Hitler, okay? So that kind of ended the lazy, shiftless, you're physically inferior part, okay? So then you kept going, and then they said, all right, well, they're still kind of dumb, so you'll never have a black quarterback, okay, because they had black athletes. And then Doug Williams, black quarterback, started in the Super Bowl. It was all the talk. First black quarterback. Will he? Because the black quarterbacks before would get the plays from the coach on the sidelines, and they wouldn't actually be doing the plays themselves. He did his own plays. Set a Super Bowl record for most yards passing, which is the record you'd want to have as quarterback in the Super Bowl. Broke all the records. That took care of that. So black quarterbacks no longer get mentioned as such because we've been there, done that, okay? So today you find black experts on television commenting on things that have nothing to do with being black. And I swore to myself that if I'm only seen on television or in venues such as this commenting about being black, then my scientific identity will be mixed with being black. So then I wouldn't be simply the scientist, I'd be the black scientist, and I'd say, well, where does that get us? Nowhere. So if I'm the scientist, and you're not thinking that I'm black, even though, of course, I am, but it's not your first thought, it's like way down here somewhere,
Exactly.
Then you celebrate my expertise without regard to my skin color. And at that point, if part of my expertise is telling you that Earth is okay, then maybe this stereotype of who's smart and who isn't would be more swiftly eroded when they've got to confront the fact that I'm telling you about whether Earth is safe, even if simultaneously you saw a black homeless person on the street. So now you'll say, not that, oh, these black people, they don't know how to work and they're all stupid. You'll have to confront the fact that there's a homeless person there and there's a person telling you about your safety on Earth because the asteroid is or is not coming. Now you have to this is cognitive dissonance. You have to reconcile this somehow. And in order to reconcile it, I'd like to believe you then look at the person in the street and saying, I think this person needs help, rather than they're unhelpable.
I want to get to the safety of the Earth issue, if I may,
Okay.
Mr. X.
So I don't know, did I answer your question? Okay.
As if you hadn't
Accurate.
heard it.
Okay,
So I want to know about the safety of the Earth.
sure.
You have an asteroid named after you.
Yes, and I double-checked before I arrived, it's not headed towards Earth.
That is what I
promise.
wanted to know.
Yes, it is a non-Earth crossing
Let's go on to the next.
asteroid at a safe distance orbiting among its thousands of asteroidal brethren in the asteroid belt.
Well, that's a good place to be
Okay.
if you're an asteroid.
Yes,
Now, I have a question about TV.
yes, yes,
You have a TV?
yes,
You've been on TV?
yes,
I've heard about it. My experience with TV producers and so on,
of which there are several in this room, I warn you in advance.
I know that.
Yes.
I had dinner with them.
Yes,
They're often put in the position of asking questions or doing things
Yeah.
in areas where they don't really know anything.
yeah. But if
So-
they're good, they do homework and figure it out. But
Yeah, I
yes.
was going to get to that.
Okay.
So you're someone who has a Ph.D. in astronomy, and when you speak on astronomy, you speak with authority because Ph.D.
Well, I try not to
Authority.
speak with authority.
Oh,
I'd
I
rather
do.
speak convincingly.
Oh, I try
And
to
then the
speak.
authority is irrelevant because the concept that I'm sharing makes so much sense to the listener that my title doesn't matter.
Oh, I just wrap myself in the mantle of authority and just go with that. Sort of the Harvard way. So,
I know when someone walks up to me and said, I graduated from Harvard, therefore, yeah, so let me hear your argument, and I'll judge the argument, not what your pedigree is. So I don't ever lead with my pedigree because
Okay.
the day I do, I don't know what I'm talking about.
Right.
Because I need the
So that's the
pedigree
part I
to
wanna get
defend
to.
my ignorance.
I want to get to that part, about the part
Go-
where you don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, go ahead.
So the difference between being a person who's knowledgeable about astronomy
Yes.
and a person who is covering a wide range of topics in science.
Indeed.
I saw the little video thing. It had all these ologies. It had psychology, anthropology,
Yeah.
I don't know,
Yeah.
stuff like that, instead of onomies. I know onomies.
We were in onomy, and we're not an ology.
No, but we're not ologies. And
Because
so,
we'd be
you know,
in
I thought,
astrology. That'd be
to
bad.
me, oh, that would
Yes.
be an ology.
That would be an ology.
Anyway.
The astrologers got to it first. So we had to come up with another astro to distinguish we from they.
Yes.
Hence, we are astronomy, but every other science is an ology.
Right.
Right, okay.
Onomy.
Go on.
We're an onomy. So you've put yourself in the position where you're often talking about things where you don't know a whole lot more than the person you're talking to. How's that?
Oh, no. I know a lot less than the person I'm talking
That's sort of what I meant to say in my own kind of polite way.
to. Okay. Yeah. Oh, so your question is?
My question is, how do you find the difference between being a guy who knows more than the person you're talking to and someone who might know less than the person you're talking to, which is your job on TV?
Well, there's the encounters with media, news reporters and the
Yeah.
like, okay? I know more than every one of them
Yeah.
in the subject that I'm being called to be interviewed.
I know
That's why I'm being called to be interviewed. Okay? Then, there are in Nova Science Now.
Yeah, that's what I meant to say.
So the Nova spinoff.
Nova Science. Who's it presented by? Never mind. Go ahead.
Okay. In that show, it's a magazine format. It's not just astrophysics. It's all the sciences.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Even medical science.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that.
Exactly. So
I have a body.
So, and by the way, I host the program. It's not total FaceTime with Tyson. It's I am one of the quote reporters in only one of the 4 segments in a program.
And the beginning and the end.
Well, and then I bookend it. Yeah, I
well,
introduce it, but I'm not in every minute.
No, okay.
But that matters.
Yeah.
That matters. I'm just
Okay.
telling you it matters.
Yeah, I'm listening.
So the segments that I am in,
Yeah.
in all cases, in almost all cases, are the ones that are physics and astronomy. Then occasionally I do other segments that would just be fun.
Yeah, the thing with the leeches.
The leeches.
Yeah.
A colleague of mine at the American Museum of Natural History is one of the world's experts on blood-sucking leeches. So I thought, well, actually, I didn't think this. The producers thought, Neil, wouldn't you just love waiting in a leech pond? And I said, no. And then I learned that we would do it with my colleague, my invertebrate invertebrate colleague.
You have a colleague who's an invertebrate?
He's not an invertebrate. Well, what do you call him?
I have some who are
Invertebrate
spineless, but this is
expert
ridiculous.
colleague. And so I said I can hang out with my guy because he's got an office down the hall, basically. So I do this, and so here's the difference. This is our goal. Whether we achieve it or not is the decision of the viewer. Our goal is I, as a scientist, become the interviewer of scientists outside of my profession. This allows me 2 things. It puts me in a position to probe them in ways a quote, simple producer might not have known how to probe them, because they too are scientifically trained as a basic inquisitor of the natural world. That's something we all have in common across disciplines. That's what I do. And then I'm as curious as the viewer. So I said, look, he's sucking me. And he says, no. They're sticky on both ends. That's not the sucking side. I said, how do you know? The thing is, so I'm asking what I think any of you would have asked. So I'm not expected to know more than the people who know more than me. I'm expected to ask intelligent questions with a foot in their camp because I'm scientifically trained, and a foot in the living room of the viewer. I am their conduit to the frontier of that science that we are conveying. And so the goal is I communicate with the folks back in the living room, and I'm probing the scientist in the field that's not mine in ways that they're unaccustomed. And in that way, you come a little bit closer to that frontier of discovery. That's our goal. I don't know if I achieve it, but that's our goal. And I have no qualms at all walking up to a scientist who's an expert in something I know nothing about, because I'm going to start asking questions.
Me too. My question for you, Dr. Tyson, is how about this Pluto thing? I know
wants to go to
people
Pluto.
care about Pluto,
Yeah.
and I know
Yeah.
that you were out in front of the International Astronomical Union by many years.
6 years.
By 6 years.
Really 7 when you include our planning.
By
but
7 years.
Yeah.
Which is 49 dog years.
Yeah.
You were out ahead of the International Astronomical Union in questioning the status of Pluto as a member of the solar system. And when it came time to set up the Rose Center, you decided that Pluto was going to be in New Jersey. And so I was wondering.
in the Hudson River, really.
Yeah.
Okay.
So and I know this makes people mad.
And pissed off.
And so I thought this would be a good subject. There are probably people out there in that room who are mad about Pluto's demotion. And I thought you might kind of want to say why it was a good idea.
Okay. Okay. First of all, I don't know if you knew. By the way, I was not the first to come up with the notion that Pluto needs some rethinking. That had been going on for a while. We were the first to do that publicly. Okay? And we were about to renovate our facility to the tune of $230 million. We're going to be cutting metal. And we said, what is the trend line in our understanding of the solar system? What he left out was we had just discovered other icy bodies in the outer solar system, orbiting with similarly cockamamie orbits to Pluto. This is a new swath of real estate discovered in the 1990s, today known as the Kuiper Belt of comets, predicted to be there by an astronomer named Gerard Kuiper at mid-century. This is the reservoir of like icy bodies that were not collected up into a planet. So they're all just out there, hanging out, minding their own business. As far away, you stay ice forever. Comets that never grow tails because they keep their distance from the sun. And so we noticed that Pluto has brethren. And we also know that Pluto is smaller. But who here is like a Plutophile? And raise your hand if you're a Plutophile. No. Okay. See, I think we did not. You think that we got them already convinced.
Yeah,
but let's assume there are a
they're
few of you
intimidated,
who
I
are
think.
just intimidated.
Yeah.
So we noticed that Pluto, there's 7 moons in the solar system bigger than Pluto. This was not known at the time Pluto was discovered. Over time, the measurements of Pluto's size gave us smaller and smaller and smaller diameters for Pluto. Pluto's diameter did not settle out until the late 1970s. In fact, in the 1970s, there were geologists, well, planetary geologists, who made a plot of the estimated diameter of Pluto over time and predicted that in 1984, Pluto would disappear completely.
Very naughty.
Now, not to sound pluggy or anything,
No.
but I have a book coming out
Oh, really?
in January called The Pluto Files, The Rise and Fall of America's Favorite Planet. And in that book, I have my files, among other things, that includes hate mail from 3rd graders. When this story hit the press, it hit the news January 21st, 2001. Now, what should have filled page 1 of the New York Times that day?
Something about an inauguration.
Inauguration of President George. They were still looking at the dimpled Chads in Florida. Stuff should have filled that page 1 of the New York Times. But there it was, though below the fold, but banner headlines, Pluto not a planet? Only in New York. There it was. Thenceforth, years of my life would be given unto defending our decision at the Rose Center for Earth and Space and fielding inquiries from really pissed off elementary school children. One of them scrawled in crayon, "Dear Dr. Tyson, put Pluto back." And they draw pictures of Pluto with their crayon. This is what it looks like. Next time I come, I want to see it. Write back soon, but not in cursive. I don't know how to read cursive yet. So I've got all this correspondence in this book.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just school
So other
children.
people wrote the book?
I would say a third of the content is the creative efforts of pissed off other people.
Very efficient.
And
Very good
yeah, it's a
work.
good way to do
Good
that,
work.
right? It included, we got permission to reproduce some hilarious comics that some creative cartoonists out there. One of them drew Pluto as this orb on a street corner with a beggar's cup. And it's an orb with eyes and nose and a mouth. Beggar's cup, looking very dejected, and holding up a sign saying, "Victim of downsizing." It's hilarious. So the book, I'm telling you, even if I didn't write the book, I'm telling you, it's hilarious.
Yeah.
It's just hilarious. And we got the history of Pluto the dog. Only Americans cared that we demoted Pluto. Europeans could care less. And I'm thinking, why did Americans care more than the Europeans? It's got to be because we have this dog called Pluto. Pluto the dog, in case you are not up on the Disney pantheon, Pluto is Mickey's dog. And I pose the question in the book that this situation is an abomination of the mammalian order. Because Pluto is Mickey's dog, but Mickey is not Pluto's mouse. And I thought that was just wrong. And so I called Disney, not the guy, he's dead, but the company, and I said, "What is this? How did this come to be?" And they said, among Disney characters, not the later characters that they bought, like Winnie the Pooh but just Disney cartoon characters, If you wear clothes,
Yeah.
you can own animals that don't.
Yeah.
Mickey's got that jacket, the
pants.
gloves, and
Pants with
Pluto
the buttons.
is butt naked.
Yeah.
There it is. What a collar that says, and Pluto walks on all fours and does not speak.
You're probably not familiar with Proposition 3.
No, I'm not.
Just saying.
Oh, okay.
It was about dogs anyway. It's
Oh,
all right. No.
and Goofy speaks and walks bipedally.
Yeah.
Wears clothes and can own pets. So that's in there too. It matters though. It's not just a distraction. If you want to understand how it came to be that America had such a love affair with this object, this dirty ice ball in the outer solar system, you cannot answer that question without recognizing that Pluto the dog was first sketched by Disney artists the same year that Pluto the cosmic object was discovered. So the same tenure in the hearts and minds of Americans. And Pluto was discovered by an American. You put all this together and our jingoistic attitudes, there you have it.
American exceptionalism in the solar system. Is that satisfactory to you, Owen? Oh, sorry. You know, Owen was in charge of crafting the resolution.
Oh yes, we have one of the members of the Planet Definition Committee of the International Astronomical Union here in the room among us.
Easy on.
So
All right.
allow me to clarify what we actually did, because we were accused of kicking Pluto out of the solar system.
Yes,
But
I believe you kicked Pluto out of the solar system.
That's not actually what we did.
Oh. What did you actually
I'll
do?
tell you.
I knew you would.
What we did was we recognized that perhaps counting planets should not be an educational exercise anymore. You had school teachers giving exams saying, what is the name of the fifth planet from the sun? That's not science. It's just not. It's parrots can do that, okay? So what we did was we took a step back, looked at the solar system, and asked, which objects are more like each other than any one of them are like anything else in the solar system? And when you do that, you group the terrestrials together. Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. You group the asteroid belt together. Ceres is an interesting exception to the other asteroids. Itself worthy of conversation. Then you get the Jovians, big, huge, low-density gaseous Jovians.
And they're Saturnine.
The gas giants. And then you get the Kuiper belt of comets, of which Pluto is a prominent member. And so we presented the family photo of the solar system. You're never counting anything. I had the press call on me up and say, so does that mean you now only have 8 planets? I said, that's not how we organize the information. They kept trying to get those words out of me so they can put a headline saying, Director of Planetarium kicks Pluto. And you know what I wanted to say, just to give them something to run with? I wanted to say, Pluto wasn't big enough to make it in New York. You know, I wanted to just mess with their heads, just to get them out of my head. So we did not, but we got criticized as unilaterally demoting Pluto. And all we did was organize it and group it with other icy bodies in the outer solar system. What the IAU did was officially demote Pluto and give it a different kind of name. And Pluto is now a Plutoid, okay? It's also a dwarf planet, Plutoid. So that's what it is, and I don't have a problem with that. I just don't, we have overvalued the word planet. If the word planet simultaneously contains a small, mostly ice by volume object that's 2/3 the size of Earth's moon, in the same bin category as Jupiter, where Earth is the size of storms on Jupiter, if you have a classification that is both of those in the same category, simply because they're round, I'm not going to lead with that when I'm trying to teach you the solar system. That's my prerogative as an educator, and it's my duty as a scientist to teach you in ways that actually make physical sense. And so people say, well, how are we going to teach the solar system to third graders? You talk about dense things like rocks. You talk about less dense things like beach balls. Kids can figure that out. You mentioned that the gas giants all have rings. They all have many moons. That's kind of cool. That's something to know. Then you take another cut through the solar system and you say, how about objects? Get excited.
Some of them have water.
Okay. Talk about object.
Mars used to. No, that's okay.
Objects. So what you do is the solar system is available to you to take cuts through the data to combine things that have like properties. So we break it up into sort of the the most fundamental physical properties, but there are other ways to slice it. For example, let's put together objects that have atmospheres. That groups that groups Mars, Venus, Earth, the Jovians, and Titan. That's kind of cool. Let's talk about atmospheres. Let's talk about storm systems. Now, another cut through it, objects that have volcanoes, living or extinct. You got Mars, Earth, Titan. So we know so much about the solar system today. If the best you can do is classify them as, is the object round? I'm sorry, we can do much better than that, pedagogically and scientifically. Let's go somewhere with the new data we've got from all the space probes that we have, and that's what we did in the Rose Center for Earth and Space, and we stand by it to this day.
No wonder you made people mad. Well, let's come back to the beginning about advice for the president, shall we? I mean, there's going to be... I listened to that speech last night, and
I was asleep.
Obama said the word science.
Yes. He's multiple times, by the way.
Once.
Multiple times. No. I mean, in his campaign, science came up
that speech
in
last
his
night, he said,
debates
"What?"
and in the thing, in ways that it did not come out of McCain's mouth.
No.
McCain was still worried about the $3 million overhead projector.
The overhead projector, that's right.
Yeah. Okay.
But so I was thinking, there's going to be a new president, there's going to be a new administration, there's probably going to be science in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a lot of people, when they think about science and why we do science, I've been talking a lot, so, you don't mind, talk about technology.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, well, technology is important because it'll make me rich. And people talk about defense, and it's a dangerous world, and we want to be safe. And people talk about science. A lot of the congressmen are kind of old guys, and they're really interested in medicine and living a long time. Can't blame them. Everybody wants to be immortal.
Which is why the budget for the NIH has tripled over the last 8 years. National Institute of Health. Yeah.
So what about science for the joy of finding things out? What about science for the fun of knowing how the world works? What do you think the prospects are in the years ahead for that?
0. Next question.
Yeah, my next question is, you made the third graders mad about Pluto, and you made the scientists mad when you were the NASA guy, whatever that was, the advisory committee guy, and you said, let's do the manned space program.
Yeah.
And the scientists said, we're not so sure about that.
Yeah.
Why don't you send our robots, and why don't you build more instruments for us? So why did you take that point of view?
Excellent question. I have learned in my advancing years that there's certain fundamental drivers of society that remain oblivious to so many in the scientific community. You will agree with my next sentence that for many of us in the community of astrophysicists, we actually believe that NASA is our private science funding agency.
Oh, yes.
And that when NASA announces that they're going to do something that is not directly benefiting our scientific interests, we cry foul, and that it's a waste of their money. Correct?
Foul.
Foul. Foul. Yes. This would be touchdown. If you had a TV, you would understand that. Yes. Okay.
Some kind of, there, this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Clipping.
Yeah, clipping. 15 yards.
So once you see how society works, how politics works, how geopolitics works, how funding gets allocated, you recognize that, first of all, the largest fraction of the NASA budget that has ever gone to science, it topped out at maybe 32%. The 50-year average is probably closer to 20%, or at most the mid-20s when you average over the 50 years. So really, the science that NASA has been doing is this tail on a dog that has geopolitical drivers that go beyond any valuation the scientific community could possibly layer onto it. It's just the fact. And if you want to stand in denial of it, fine, but you won't understand how money actually gets allocated in Congress. And so there's the MAN program, which is hugely expensive. It costs you 100 times as much to send a human being to do a science experiment than it would to send a robot to do the same science experiment. You send a human to Mars, they're going to pull out a black box that'll measure the rock. Well, we can get a robot to do that, okay? I understand that. However, to this day, nobody has named a high school after a robot. Nobody says, when I grow up, I want to be a robot, okay? No one says, let's invite the robot to give the commencement speech at our university. That doesn't happen. What does happen is they invite astronauts. What happens is astronauts are heroes. What happens is the manned program is sufficiently expensive that to make that happen spreads money into electoral districts that enable representatives to vote NASA's budget in Congress. This is the complexity of how this runs. And to turn a blind eye to it and cry foul that all the money that NASA gets is not going to science is a level of profound political ignorance that I think we the scientific community, need to up several notches of geopolitical maturity before we get in there and believe we can actually make an argument that makes sense. I'm just telling you, I wish it were different. But I wear two hats. The science hat, which is right aligned with you, let's just send robots. But then there's a geopolitical hat that says, well, wait a minute, there wouldn't be NASA if it weren't for the Cold War. There wouldn't be so many things were it not for economic drivers or military drivers. And I've done the homework on this. I was going to fill a whole book because I want to go to Mars with people because that would just be kind of cool. And I said, that's going to be expensive. Let me research all the drivers in the history of human culture and civilization and make a list of the cost and how they galvanize the energy, the enthusiasm of the population to enable it. And then I'd say, well, how much does Mars cost? And let's do that with the public. I was going to make a whole book of this. And I did my homework. You get the pyramids, the great voyages, make the list. We would agree of what's on that list. The most expensive things we've ever done as a species. There are only three drivers. War, or more broadly, the urge to not want to die. Okay?
Safety, I call it.
Money flows like rivers if you don't want to die. The urge to get rich.
That's on my list.
And the praise of royalty or deity. I have found only those three drivers responsible for the greatest human projects that have ever been undertaken. So, notice that among these three, exploration and discovery are not among them at all. The urge to explore is not among them. Yes, Columbus was an explorer, but somebody had to write the check, and it's the person who wrote the check that cares about these other things. And so, same with Cook's voyage. It's widely said that Cook went to the South Pacific so he can measure the transit of Venus across the disk of the sun, an important scientific project. What happened within 20 years of Cook's voyage after he mapped the coastline of all the islands down there? Britain takes over Australia and ships their criminals there, okay? And Britain rules the seas. There's Columbus Day every year in New York. A parade comes down 8th Avenue, lands at Columbus Circle, there's a statue of him. The entire Italian-American community comes out for that. I feel like climbing the statue, yelling out, "Go home!" Italy did not pay for this man's voyage. You have no right to celebrate what he did. Spain paid for his voyage. That's why most of the world that does not speak English speaks Spanish and not Italian. You know how many countries speak Italian? Italy and the Vatican. That's it. Go look at your maps. The flag that Columbus planted was not the Italian flag, it was the Spanish flag. So, Isabella and Ferdinand knew all about these three drivers. So you ask me, will we ever do science for discovery? I wish we could and would, but when you have expensive enough projects, the reason why these three survive, this last one in modern times is basically doesn't exist anymore. We don't do things for kings and nor spend huge amounts of money on coherent projects in praise of God. That doesn't happen anymore the way it once did. Because fewer states are run by religions today than once were. So ignoring that, you basically have war, I don't want to die, and I want to get rich, okay? So these are the two drivers left over. So now I submit to you that if you have a science project that is expensive, if you want to do anything that's expensive, it takes more than 1 year to fund it. So here comes the years. Now, watch what happens. If it's not, I want to get rich and I don't want to die, the funding timescale exceeds economic and political timescales. So while you could get people to agree on a funding at one moment, then the economics turns, it gets discarded like a hot potato. That's what happened with the superconducting super collider. There it is. During the Cold War, America has this huge, has a huge legacy of particle accelerators. Do you know the bomb that was dropped in Nagasaki was made out of an element that was discovered 5 years earlier? Plutonium, by the way, the first element discovered after the discovery of the cosmic object, Pluto. So, discovered after uranium and neptunium, except they're still planets, right? So Pluto got an element named after it on false pretense, by the way. That's in the book too, by the way.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, we got it. So my point is,
wrap this one.
okay, so my point is, the accelerator is at a funding level greater than something you could fund just in one swing. So there it goes, they dig the hole, peace breaks out. The wall comes down in Berlin. The budget flinches on this project. The entire project gets cut. Yes, you can read the report, yes, that we're worried about the management and the time and thing. If there was a diamond mine at the end of that or a new weapon, that stuff would have been built like that. And so I don't have the confidence that the nation values discovery on a level that could enable major funded projects. So you have to couch it in a defensive terms and in I want to get rich terms. And therein is that you need science to drive the economy, because science leads to technology, and I'm okay with that. And you need science to develop means of self-defense. After that, you're kidding yourself, and I wish that were not true. I say it not because I want it to be true, I say it because that is the behavior of our species. And I've come to understand it and recognize it. You go against the flow of that, you're just simply swimming upstream, and half your energy is just to stay afloat.
Well, we wouldn't want to stop on that note, I can tell you that. Though we may want to stop pretty soon.
Okay.
So I wanted to say,
Yes.
I wanted to give you one
The
other
director's
thought.
standing up and coming closer and closer to the
Yeah, that's always a
podium.
good sign.
Okay.
I just wanted to say that it seems to me that in this whole panoply of scientific things that you look at when you do this wonderful magazine on TV.
Oh, wait,
that-
just a quick question. I didn't directly answer your question, which I can in one sentence. You said I made some enemies in my professional community for advocating
just said they were mad at you.
the MAN program.
We could be mad at you without being your enemy.
If you take away the MAN program,
Yeah.
it is a certainty, based on funding trends, that that money will not go to science. It'll go to some other project. And so the greatest science that's ever been conducted has basically happened below the funding radar, piggybacking other projects that have geopolitical significance. That's been the history of this. That's the history of particle physics, where the military knew they needed to understand particles. They fund physicists doing research. Oops, we need you for the Manhattan Project. Come in the back door.
Right.
So I'm just being...
But I just want to elevate this
Good.
for the last little bit here,
Okay.
just for a second, which is to talk about astronomy as the exceptional science you were talking about. Exceptionalism, here's a good kind of a science. And it seems to me that if you look around in science, and you do this now for all of us on this TV show.
On the TV show, yeah.
Yeah,
Nova.
I've heard about it. And it seems to me that if you look at all the sciences, astronomy is really special in a lot of ways. Astronomy is special in the way that there are amateur astronomers who really do serious astronomy. Astronomy is special in the way that a lot of people get into science for the very first time by learning about astronomy, and they become scientists in other fields, but because of astronomy. And that often it's a planetarium that kind of launches people into understanding something about astronomy. Now, you've been running a planetarium. Do you think these arguments are true, and do you think there are ways to make them stronger in the future?
I think there was a time that I thought I was biased
Yes.
in thinking all those very same thoughts. And then I realized, no, I'm not biased.
You're just right.
I'm just right.
Yeah.
And the measure of that is, apart from the NOVA programming, and apart from if I have a book that comes out and they're marketing people who insert me into talk shows for marketing the book, and by the way, that marketing interval lasts just a couple of weeks.
Oh, I know.
Any other time I'm on TV and the book is shown, it's not because I was thrust into the show, it's because my office was called. And if you look at the statistics of this, about 85% of the time I'm ever on television, it is because a producer was excited by some news story that came across the wire, and they want commentary. And so I'm not twisting their arms. They are coming to me. And they want my comments. And it's not work that I've done, it's work that others of our colleagues have done. They know I can help tie a bow on it or put it in context, and I'm happy and privileged to serve that role. So I submit to you that not only is there a fundamental interest in the universe expressed,
I'm not breathing.
expressed by, is that me? Expressed, is my mic on or off? Hello, can you hear me? Yeah. Not only is there a fundamental interest that's out there, dare I say it may be encoded in our DNA. Can I give you quickly my favorite after-the-fact accounting for that with no evidence to support it? Humans are one of the few, if not the only mammal that's perfectly comfortable going to sleep on our backs. And we sleep at night. So if you sleep, or if you're asleep on your back at night and you wake up,
Yeah.
you are facing the sky.
Uh-huh.
Other mammals who sleep on their stomach and wake up at night face the ground. So it might be that deep within us, we have this, I know, it's made up, it's a made up accounting, but it's kind of intriguing that you wake up and look and there's the moon or there's a brighter star than another, and you just wonder. And so I don't think it's so, my dog doesn't look up and wonder at the night sky, but I do, and so do others who are not professional astronomers. So I think it's part of us, but one way to magnify it is that the trend line in modern astrophysics is the urge to understand the origins of things. And the origins of things, it turns out, are deeply and remarkably cross-disciplinary. I think the first of our community that did that were the particle physicists coming together with the cosmologists. The cosmologists turn the clock back and you get the universe was this big, matter's behaving in ways that we're not formally trained in, bring in the particle physicists. They come in, boom, a new field is born, astroparticle physics, and there is the understanding of the Big Bang. Then we have the search for life in the universe. We're going to look on Mars for life. I'm not very effective at that. I wouldn't necessarily know life if I stepped in it. So I got to knock on the door of the biologist over in the biology department. And then maybe there's the chemistry of the soils that matter. You bring in the chemist. And then, so I bring in the chemists, the biologists, the roboticists, the dynamicists, the astrophysicists, the geologists, and we're all investigating a common question because the answer to that question would be relevant to us all. So I see, putting punctuation on your opening remarks, that the study of the universe is the most interdisciplinary thing you could possibly do. And NASA is uniquely positioned to enable that fact. So if there is one day, and that's getting back to the pragmatics of this, if there's one day biological warfare breaks out, I want to know that we've got the most brilliant biologist there is in our midst, and that person who would have been the most brilliant biologist didn't become an investment banker. I'll know we'll have them because we've got such cool projects for them to work on, studying the possibility of life on Mars or in the sub-oceanic terrain of Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. By the way, if you discover life on Europa, would it be European? Yeah, that's we got to wonder. Got
Like
top people working on that one.
Yeah,
So my point is, I agree with you. I don't think I'm biased. I think it's real, and it could be the greatest conduit for the public to reach all the sciences that there ever was. And I'm privileged to be a part of that and to be in the public's service to deliver it to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.